Yeah. So welcome everyone to the webinar for connecting with your soul's memory and reversing some generational trauma and looking at some things like that. So we'll jump into that today. Um, I'd like to thank you all for coming and for you choosing to listen to that heart's calling. We're a part of the divine oneness, but we're experiencing it in a human body. So it's really easy to forget that divine part of us. So I'm hoping that you're here to tap into that part of you. So we'll start with calling the directions, and I'll talk a little bit, and then I have a slideshow presentation for you. And if you have any questions as we go through the session today, please type those into the chat, and we can, I'll try to address those. But right now, if you would go to the chat, if you can, and type in, where you live in the world. I know we have some folks who are from here, from the United States, but we have some folks from Canada and some folks from Europe. So just let us know where you are in the world, because I really like to know. I can't look back because I don't require registration, so I can't look back and see who was registered to be with us. So I appreciate you coming. So I'm going to, let's see if I can do this, pin myself. So I'm the speaker, and when we get to a portion where we can talk together, I'll take us back to the group page. But let's see. Let me mute everyone. Okay, just so we don't have any outside noises coming in. And so everyone is muted. Yes, and thank you all for coming. I'm so very, very happy that you're here today. If you have, if you would like to smudge and clear your space, I have been smudging here for, I don't know, half an hour or so, and because I'm inside, I don't have a huge amount of sage continuing, but I'm periodically burning sage and lavender for connecting to the past, and also the rosemary for remembering. So those are in my smudging package today. You can also clear your space with live cuttings of herbs. That's another way to do it without having to do the smoke in your space. And I'm also clearing our space with an not amber, but amethyst wand. So I'm just going around the space here with that wand. So whatever methods work for you, it's always good to take that in and to clear that space. So I'm going to start with the directions, and I'm going to, in honoring the ancestors, I'm going to use a rattle that's symbolic of Hathor's rattle. Hathor is an Egyptian goddess, and this is not exactly like hers was, but it's one that's made in the image of that type of rattle. So I start that rattle in the center of the circle, saying, "Thank you, divine light. Thank you for being with us this day and taking us on this journey together." And I turn to the east. I call to the ancestors of the east, the ancestors who come to remind us to live in gratitude, the ancestors who remind us to hold the hearth of our hearts, of our bodies, of our homes, so that we remember that we transmit energy to others, and the ancestors from the East remind us to keep ourselves clear and open. And the ancestors of the East bring us illumination. So our path this day is illuminated as we turn toward the south. In the south, in the full brilliant light of the midday sun, the ancestors rise up, dancing and twirling, laughing, because the south winds call us to remember the beauty of life, to remember creativity, to remember to honor the laughter, no matter what else is happening in our lives, to remember that the divine is there with us and we can live in joy. Thank you, ancestors of the South. Ancestors of the West, the direction that indigenous people say the souls leave the body and move to the West in their transition from this human life into the other world. And so we call the ancestors of the West those benevolent allies who can help us with our growth and guide us. We ask you to be with us this day as we step into our journey of introspection. Lead us deep into our hearts so that we may understand and begin to remember who we are. And I turn to the north. The ancestors in the north rise up. Ma'at stands with us in the north, stands with her scales of balance, reminding us to stay in balance, to stay in harmony, to stand up for justice. And she and Danu of the Celtic line implore us to stand up as warriors of the heart, to remember who we are, to awaken to our life's journey. And we say thank you to these ancestors. And we come full circle back to the center. And I raise my hands toward the heavens and say thank you to the stars, the moon, the planets, our sun. Thank you. Send us your guiding light as we go on this journey. And I lean toward Mother Earth and sit in gratitude as she reaches up her arms to hold us, to let us sit on her skin, to let us float in her waters, to let us breathe in her air, to remind us that the fire of the earth is inside us as well. And we thank you, thank you, thank you. And I say, Aho, Ashi, Amen. Blessed be, Hamdulillah, and so it is. Closing that medicine wheel, that spirit wheel, with words from the many traditions, because most of the indigenous people had some form of the medicine wheel, some form that they used as they greeted the day and said good evening and stepped into the nighttime of introspection. So it is not new knowledge, but old ancient knowledge that guides the medicine wheel. So I have a couple of, I always like to do quotes, and let me pull my screen over so I can read them to you, so I don't try to remember them. One is, I don't have an author of this because it's kind of a phrase that's frequently used over time. The facts of life are not written in stone, but in invisible ink. Facts are not fixed. They are mutable and ever changing. And another quote that comes from the Daily Om that they published in July, I thought was very appropriate with this. The more you release, the more you grow, and the more your soul will evolve. So there are the quotes of the day. And then I'd like to share with you a little bit about the moon and the stars and our planets, what's going on around us. Today we are talking about generational issues that contribute to who we are from hundreds of generations past, contribute to who we are right now. And part of seeing our patterns is observing the cycles of the earth and the moon and the planets, and paying attention to what's going on beyond our physical planet Earth. So today, Neptune gets in an alignment with the sun, and that energy makes today a great day for dreaming. Not such a good day for those practical, logical actions, but a good day for dreaming. And this week, Mars will start a 7-month journey into the constellation Gemini. And this placement can help us be more assertive in our communications and perhaps actually help us to say out loud things that we've been holding back. And the moon is in her waning phase. We've left the full moon. We're in that journey toward the new moon. And that waning energy is slowly helping us move inward because it's a time for inner reflections. So for the next hour or so, let Neptune open you to the dreaming, and let the waning moon help us sit in introspection as we take this journey toward your soul memory. And then we'll also call on Kuan Yin, one of our, actually, she was supposed to have actually lived as a human being. So we'll call her one of our human ancestors. As we go into a meditation, we'll call her to guide us. So, and if you have any questions along the way, please post them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them after I get out of the slideshow presentation. But before I switch over to that, let me ask if there are any questions, anyone. If you have a question, I can't see everyone on one screen, so just unmute yourself and go ahead and speak if you have a question. There are about 20 of us on the call right now, so.
Hi, Peggy. It's Charlotte. Hello. I don't know if you can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Go right ahead.
I was actually just wondering, because I got sick a while ago. I get seizures every now and then, and but this was like a big, I call it traumatic trauma releases. So
yes.
And I had a massive one on Saturday morning, and I haven't been quite. I'm slowly getting myself back together. So I'm just kind of like thinking, actually, because this is something I'd love to partake in this. I just don't know if maybe I should just sit out, and if there's a replay, would I be able to sit in the replay? Because I might not be, I don't know if I'll be too susceptible or too vulnerable for this. I don't know what, exactly what's going to be happening.
Yes, just stay with it as long as you feel comfortable. And when you feel like you need to leave, just go right ahead and go out of the call, because I am recording right now, and I will send out the link for the recording probably later tonight. I'll send it by email. So, and I'll also post the link on my website, so you can either go directly to the website or you can watch for the email. But it will be posted. Yeah. So stay with us, Charlotte, as long as you're comfortable with that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any comments, questions? Okay, well, I'm going to go back to the speaker view. I think I'm pinned, so as we go through the slideshow, I think you'll be able to see me. I have behind me, I really thought about the ancestors as I thought about what I would put on the wall today. And so I've put a painting of mountains because, you know, we often think about the ancestors going to the west and going off into a mountain. And so for me, that was a representation. And the bridge is where we walk across that bridge of water into another space. And you can't quite see the crow, but the crow is flying out into the world. And then I have the two goddesses here with me as well. So that's my representation of bringing the ancestors into our space today in the wall altar behind us. So let me share my screen. And as I said, if you have any questions, do by all means, you know, post those in the chat and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. So we're talking about connecting with your soul memory. And part of that may involve reversing some generational trauma that you may or may not remember or know anything about. So first, we'll look at what soul memory is. I think there are many definitions, so not just one definition, but also what is our role in this cosmic plan and how can we transform the things that prevent us from living according to those sacred instructions that come from our soul. So we're going to link into the ancient memory that's held and transmitted through that Celtic spirit wheel. As I call the directions, you know, I link in with both Egyptian and Celtic deities because they speak loudly to me, but you can link in with, you know, any of them as we go through. But much of what I do is very much connected to the Celtic and the Egyptian line. So let's take a look here at what soul memory one definition might be. I call it remembering your connection to the divine. And to awaken that soul memory, we have to open our hearts, but then we have to take that information and that memory and weave who we are here and now into the ancient memory that comes around. And so it's weaving sort of like the infinity circle. Where are we on the infinity circle that has no beginning and no ending? Where's our memory and where are we now? So let stories and messages from that ancient memory come into your mind, body, and spirit. So we can seek this memory by exploring, one of the ways is by exploring human generations. Our grandparents and multiple level grandparents passed down physical traits to us. They passed down skills and tools and recipes and values and belief systems. So what are their stories? Now, you may not have ever met some of you might not have even met your parents. You might have been adopted. And some of you may have never met your grandparents or your great grandparents. So we'll look at some ways to try to get to some of their stories. And you know, hopefully you have some family stories, but even if you don't, maybe there are some ways to tap into those stories. And what are your stories? What are you passing on to the future generations? What were you born with? And how much of that did you bring from your ancestors and your past incarnations? And what have you changed since you came to planet Earth? So let's look at some methods to embrace our past generations and perhaps past lives. Some of those methods would be searching for the wisdom of our ancestors, finding our own wisdom consciousness and our unique gifts, um, finding our path where we can be of service to others, to Mother Earth, to the human collective, and to all beings of Mother Gaia. So transforming and healing our generational trauma can impact actually who we are today and who we may be in the future and who our future generations are. So today, let's look at a journey through the spirit wheel of life, and see if it can help us a little bit to embrace some of the past and the future. So the ancient spirit wheel has the center, and we're going to take a bit of a journey around the medicine wheel, but we always start in the center because that center space can help awaken that ancient knowledge. It is our connection to the divine, the connection to the oneness. So we start in the center and say, thank you to the ancestors who bring us information from that divine connection. And in the East, we look at birth and soul memory. As we take this journey in human form, we look at birth and soul memory. And then we move to the South, where if we say the East is birth, then South is our young adulthood. It's our human life that kind of clouds our soul purpose. And as we move on and mature a little more, we move into some level of introspection. And then as we reach an older age, we begin to turn back to where we came from and start trying to remember who we really are. So we'll start our journey here. We start our journey as we come to Earth in the East with that rising sun. So in the East, we were born with the soul memory of who we truly are. We were born with that memory. Whether you remember it now or not, it was with you when you were conceived and when you came through that birth canal. Newborn babies might not be able to speak, but they do remember. But once we begin to learn to speak and to walk and to interact, the older we got, the less we could remember who we really were and who we really are. So our memory of the divine source began to fade and Earth became our focus. But the memory is still within us. It's in our very bones. You know, the indigenous Native Americans have teach a method called becoming the hollow bone. And even in our less than connected to the divine Western culture, we even say things like, I knew it in my bones. You've probably heard somebody say that. So our bones actually are part of the mineral element. And that mineral element is the principle of creativity. It's the principle of resources and stories and symbolism. The gift from our bones is the remembering. And the bones of the earth are the stones. So to know our true story of the earth, take a stone, put a stone into your palm, and sit with that stone and let it talk to you. Let it tell you its stories of the earth. So we're born with that soul memory, but as we move into that young adulthood, in that journey to the south, which is the element of fire, we don't remember very much about unconditional love because we learn about love in human form from our ancestors. And unaware that we're following generational patterns, we express love according to what we've been trained that love is. And in human form, love mostly is a love that has conditions and has judgments and expectations. That's a part of the humanness of our loving. So we're born into an emotional and a traumatic world. I mean, birth itself is traumatic. And as we're being born, we form our first judgment. We're being torn from our peaceful garden. And it's a hard journey. It's not a pretty sight. So our first judgment began to cut us off from our divine source, our origin. In that birthing process, we feel uncomfortable and fragmented. And the result is that we very often spend our entire lives trying to make somebody else make us feel whole again. So that feeling of fragmentation creates a chemistry in our body or an emotion. And much of that chemistry or emotion falls into fight or flight. You know, you've probably heard that term 100 times, fight or flight. The fight response triggers anger and sometimes hatred. And the flight response, the run, triggers fear and resentment. So we fall, and there are many other terms that we can put in here, but we fall into this place because of our distance that we feel from our divine source. We have these emotional feelings that really send us in a different direction from looking for our source. So that emotion that we have drives us to carry out whatever those actions are: hate, anger, fear, resentment, and on and on. And what we think becomes, what we think manifests into our world. So we are what we think. It's a little bit scary, but it's the reality of living in this physical body, in this human life. So human love and judgments and expectations tend to cloud our soul's purpose. And so we create these habits and these behaviors that support our ego. And we forget that we really, our origin is that of being a soul. And we forget to enrich that soul and to pay attention to those soul messages. So some of these habits and behaviors are our own making, and some of them are trained into us by our ancestors. So as we move toward the West, our journey in the West begins to stir our conflict between the soul and the ego. We leave young adulthood, we move toward middle age, and that journey begins the conflict. Sometimes we have to step into the dark night of the soul, step into introspection, but step into sometimes even a painful introspection. So as painful as that dark night may be, it can drive us to awaken our soul's purpose. So as you as you begin to think about your soul's purpose, you can become one of many things that you can do is to become more aware of your actions and become an observer. I had a teacher, I won't tell you how many years ago, 50 years ago, I think it was, who really talked and taught about becoming the observer. And his instructions were that every night, the minute you get into bed, you sit there and observe your entire day. Okay, that's hard. First of all, you don't remember your entire day. And even if you do, there are probably parts that you want to forget. So we don't tend to do that very well. But one thing you can do is let your awareness float out around you. And so if you can put your awareness over your left shoulder, putting your awareness there helps you to see your judgments before they take place. Looking to the left is looking at the future. The left sees just before we judge ourselves or others. The top of the head, if you put your awareness there, which is where most of us do, we're watching it as it happens. And at the right is our past. We're seeing it after it's already happened. So if you can put your awareness on your left shoulder, just as a reminder, once in a while, tap yourself on the shoulder to say, oh, I need to pay attention to what I'm thinking, saying, doing. And when we catch ourselves doing something unconsciously, something like, displaying fear or anger or any kind of old patterns that we know are not helpful for us, you put the dot on the left shoulder again. Not criticize yourself, not judge yourself, just put the dot back again and become the observer again. Because, all of the judging that we do does not help us in our spiritual journey. So moving toward the west, that pain and the joy help us move into introspection that can help us remember who we are. And then in the north. Now, if we talk about it in terms of years of human life on the circle, we would say we're moving into our elderly years. And that's somewhat true on this journey, but we also can make this journey much, much faster. And as I look at some of the new generation coming into life today, I have a feeling they're not going to take as long as we have to get to this awakening of wisdom consciousness in the north. So regardless of where we are in our age and in our experience, the upheaval of the world today comes in to remind us that it's time now to pay attention. It's time to remember who we are. It's time to let go of those things that no longer help us on our spiritual journey, those things that block our path and block our vision and block our awakening. It's time to let go and look at our memory and remember who we really are. Because those self-limiting behaviors block our connection to the divine. So, how do we remember? Well, let's look at the earth. There are things like crystals and sacred sites and sacred geometry that can help us do that. And there are other techniques like healing modalities like past life regression and timeline healing, which is something that I do. Sound healing, meditation, another piece that I teach and do. So there are healing modalities and there are earth-based things that we can work with. And so I have just a short video. This was made in Egypt, and these folks were working on the farm, and this is a lunch break. And one of the people was having a really hard time that day. Wait just a second, let me go back. And so the man sitting here, and granted, he's dirty because he's just come out of the field from farm work. He is an imam, um, who does the chants at the various hours of prayer time at the mosque, and he is chanting from the Quran, with hands on healing. He has his hand on the head, and so we'll listen to just a little bit of him doing this chanting. فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أنتم أشد خلقا من السماء بناها رفع سمكها فسواها وأغطش ليلها وأخرج ضحاها والأرض بعد ذلك دحاها أخرج منها ماءها ومرعاها والجبال أرساها متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم فإذا جاءت الطامة الكبرى يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى وبرزت الجحيم لمن يرى فأما من بغى وآثر الحياة الدنيا فإن الجحيم هي المأوى وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى يسألونك عن الساعة أيان مرساها. So there are many types of hands-on healing, and there are different types of toning and different types of chanting. But those are some of the pieces of the healing modalities that can help us remember and help us get to a place of coherence in who we are and what we're doing. Some other ways of remembering, back to working with the earth, with crystals, sacred sites, sacred geometry. Working with crystals is another way to do that, because these are the bones of the earth. And this is mica. Mica, with its many, many layers, carries much information if you can work with mica. And then there are many different quartz. There are different shapes and different clarity. Some are different colors. Some are clear. Some are white, smoky. They have a different kind of resonance that can help us a bit. And then another type of stone, not necessarily of a particular variety, but stones that have images. You see the face in this one? I know you can't see me very well, but I have this one sitting on the desk in front of me, and it has several faces. That's probably the most dominant face that it has, but I can sit with that in my hand and not literally hear with my ears, but feel some stories that come through sometimes. And so if you are attracted, like I am, to stones with faces, many times they can tell you ancient stories. Another method is sacred sites. Actually, being at sacred sites can really open you to a whole different world that you may not have ever remembered before. Being at the site, or even working with pictures of the site, can trigger that memory, that vibration. This is Wells Cathedral, and there's all sorts of sacred geometry in the building of this cathedral, but the very energy of the cathedral is very dynamic. Most of these ancient cathedrals were built very specifically on water line and energy line crossings. They didn't just happen to show up at that particular location. They were very purposeful. There was knowledge at that point in time about where to build and how to build. And there are many, many sacred places. This is a picture of the Singwai people in Arizona with, those are some of the carvings on the walls. And that group of people lived there somewhere between 650 and 1250 current era. So more than 1,000 years ago. And so standing in that place, just, I remember looking at this and in such awe. And the vibration from being in that place just took me to another awareness within myself. And then there are standing stones and stone circles. This particular picture is Abermore in Scotland. Um, Standing in those stone circles can bring you an awareness different from what you would have away from there. And sometimes there are not circles, but just single stones that are standing that have very dynamic energy to awaken things inside yourself. I remember being in Ireland with one of the tours, and one of my people put her hands on a particular standing stone, and she stood there and shook. And she said, I remember this place. I remember being here. We were at one stone, but there's this enormous standing stone across from us. And she said, I was here when we put that stone together. True story. I mean, for her, it absolutely was a true story. It doesn't matter whether it's actual memory or whether it's memory coming through from the past, but if it helps awaken you to remember who you are and to be more in touch with your path, then it's done its job. Another method that can be really easy, relatively easy to get to, is working with sacred geometry. Labyrinths are tremendous, and you can work with the pictures of these things, but like just like you can with sacred sites. But the dynamic energy awakening is very different when you walk in a labyrinth, different from looking at a labyrinth. So if you can find a labyrinth nearby, that is, I would strongly urge you to walk the labyrinth. Or a Vesica Pisces, like the top picture. That's the two circles overlaid. And there's, I mean, the symbology goes on forever and ever, like the earth world, the spirit world, and the land in between, or birth. And I mean, it just, the symbology is on and on. And so you may find some very, very interesting things that occur when you step into a Vesica Pisces. Or a medicine wheel, which is what we're talking about today. Even thinking the medicine wheel certainly is a dynamic process, but standing in a medicine wheel can give you a different kind of awakening and energy. Or a Merkaba, or other sacred geometry structures that can be very, very helpful in guiding you to awaken. So back to the spirit wheel, in that sacred center, we connect with the divine. If we walk the journey around the circle, we come back to the middle. And in that middle, we are actually walking in the divine light. Walking that path means that you are traveling with ancient wisdom. And if you embrace the path of the spirit wheel, that path can teach us how to share the wisdom of our own generation. So living that path, truly living the path of the spirit wheel and sharing its wisdom, can open us to appreciating others' individual unique gifts. Even the people we don't like have gifts. They have things to share with us. Um, Another teacher of mine once said, everyone you meet is an example of either what to do or what not to do. And so if we can look at people as a gift, even if we don't like what they're doing, then we may be able to learn something from them. And so when we have that appreciation and perhaps understanding of others, we might be able to bring our own lives more into coherence with the natural world. We're all looking for loving relationships. We want vibrant health. We want a serious, heartfelt dialogue with someone else. That's part of why COVID has been so painful to us, because we've broken our paths of these face-to-face encounters with humans. And so we're all looking for these same things. And if we can see others and let go our judgment, we can open to our own selves. So as you walk on the earth, remember, you are connecting with the earth, which means if you will open to it, you're connecting with the divine. The earth mothers are calling us to remember who we are. And we can call on them. We can call on them for courage to help us release our fear. We can call on them as we look at our shadow side and really look at those things about ourselves that we either don't like or we know we need to release. And as the Earth Mothers call us, remember to care for her as well. Care for her land, her water, her air, her trees, all of her beings. Because we're being called to stand up as warriors of the heart, as warriors who don't back down when it's a little bit uncomfortable, as warriors who, yeah, don't like to meditate every day, but become the warrior and do it anyway. Or to take care of your physical body and, exercise or walk every day. Like, yeah, that's not always easy either. So there are many, many, many aspects of being a warrior of the heart. And part of that is holding the hearth. And what that means is to pay attention to the energy that you have in your heart, because what you think flows out from you, whether you say it in oral words that people can hear or not. You still send that vibration out from you. So it behooves us to remember to be warriors of the heart and walk in harmony with the divine light. But how do we do this? Yeah, those are nice words. They're good to hear, and it's always helpful to hear that kind of thing, but how do you really do that? Well, when we really engage in looking at our actions and thoughts and behaviors, we really can begin to reverse some of our own trauma that we created and some of that generational trauma that's come down to us through the ages. But most of the time that trauma is unconscious, and so changing is definitely not easy. But there are a few methods that can help us with some of that. Things like meditation, things like guidance from the ancestors, things like living in harmony with planetary vibration. So our ancestors, ancient ancestors, tracked the stars and the planets and the moon, and they were paying attention to what the vibrations were of that period of time. So if we can pay attention to that, we can make our journey easier. Not easy, just a little easier if we are flowing with the vibration that's out there. Our ancestors tracked the planets, and one of the planets that they very often looked at was Venus, moving through the sky, because she rises, she becomes the morning star and the evening star with great consistency. And throughout the indigenous world, people have looked at Venus and her movement, which indicate many things. She's called the planet of love, and so she reminds us of beauty and art. She helps us focus on that healing balm of love, of unconditional love. So September 14th, next month, Venus will be disappearing from the morning sky and dropping into the evening. That marks a time of death and rebirth. As Venus meets the sun, she rises anew. That's the rebirth, and that will happen this year on December 1st. The ancient Egyptians paid attention to Venus because the rising of the Nile that came in to flood and fertilize the land and water the crops happened with the rise and the fall of Venus. And many, many other cultures looked at that and followed that. So Venus passes away, goes through the death, and she's reborn as the morning star. So get ready. She's going to the underworld next month. Even Van Gogh painted Venus into his Starry Night painting. This, just beside the tree, this is supposed to be the representation of Venus in this painting. And as Venus dives into the underworld, she asks us to complete our shadow work, to really look at ourselves, to step into introspection and pay attention to what we're doing. Pay attention between now and December 1st. Look at ourselves and do our shadow work so that we can step into the harmonic vibration of her birth back into the morning star. And one more thing that I just have to share with you, because I love looking at the planets and the constellations and the stars that are out there. And you may have heard about this on the news, but Betelgeuse in the Orion constellation is in the news right now. Now, Orion, the constellation of Orion, and the stars within that system have been known to all of the indigenous people, because those stars within Orion are very bright and very visible to us on planet Earth. The pyramids were aligned with it. In Ireland and Scotland, there are carvings that refer to the constellation of Orion. The Mayans, I mean, the list goes on and on of the indigenous people who were aware of the Orion constellation and what it meant and the alignment with the various stars at various times. So Betelgeuse is in the northwestern, I think, portion of Orion. And so for thousands of years, I mean, I did some research on this, and everybody who was anybody, 1200s, 1400s, 1800s, they were all looking at this constellation, and frequently were paying attention to Betelgeuse because it was known as the 10th brightest star in the sky. But in 2020, it was downgraded to the 24th brightest because it began to dim. whoa, what's going on? Well, when stars die, this is a star like our sun, except it's about 10 times larger than our sun. When stars die, they start to dim, and they dim and they dim, and then eventually they explode into what's called a supernova. And we actually can see a supernova explosion with the naked eye from planet Earth. It only happens about every 10,000 years, though, so we don't get many chances. I have found at least 2 live sites on YouTube where they're watching Betelgeuse because it appears that it's going to explode into a supernova right now, this year. I mean, live sites. The first one opened in April because we don't know when this will happen, and it could be another year, but all indications tell us that it's going to happen this year. So, what does that mean for us? Because the constellation of Orion has been so significant in our past. So, it's one of those ancestral things that we need to pay attention to, not ancestral in terms of our human ancestors, but part of the ancestry of the heavens. So, living in harmony with the planetary vibrations is important. It's one of the methods to help bring us into coherence. But other methods include meditation and guidance from the ancestors and many other kinds of things. These are just ones that I happen to work with. So we're going to call on one of our ancestors through a meditation with Kuan Yin. She actually was said to have lived as a human being on planet Earth. And I won't go into the story of who she was as a woman, but she had a very brutal time, and she learned forgiveness and compassion. And the story is that when she died, she committed to bringing compassion to the humans on earth. Her very name translates into one who sees and hears the cry from the human world. She's honored by Buddhists and Taoists, but by many, many others throughout the world. She's usually seen with these robes, often with something covering her head, but what is consistent is some sort of a vase or a flower where she has this holy dew that is coming from the vase or the stem of the flower, pouring out life, pouring out the water of life and blessing us as we move through. And so the Buddhist tone of vibration for her mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum, which invokes the embodiment of compassion. And so we're going to do a little meditation with her, and I will, in a few minutes, chant that for just a little bit. But I'd like to start this journey a little different from the way we generally start meditations. Usually I ask you to close your eyes, but what I'd like you to do to begin with is to look at the screen and just look at the blank screen, emptying your mind, thinking there's nothing there but emptiness. And then in your mind, you say, but there's something there. There's the sea, the ocean. So breathe in the ocean air. Taste the moisture of rain or of the ocean, or the moisture of the tears of your ancestors, or perhaps the tears of Kuan Yin. And as you gaze at the sky, you see that the night has come. The sky is darkened and the moon has risen, full, round, white, And in your mind, see the ocean, silver in that soft moonlight, and see the white caps. And as the night darkens, see that brilliant moon in the black sky. And feel calm and happy. But the moon begins to grow. And soon, the moon becomes Kuan Yin herself, standing against the night sky. So as you see Kuan Yin, hold her image in your mind and slowly close your eyes. I'll begin to chant. And then in a few moments, after some chanting, we'll go into the silence. And as we go into the silence, sit with Kuan Yin in your meditation. Listen to her. Ask her questions. Talk with her. You could even reach out and take her hands or put your hands in her hands. But sit with Kuan Yin in this meditation as I chant. Om Hare Ma Hum Om Mare Padme Hum Om Mare Padme Hum Om Mare Padme Hum Hare 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 Padme Slowly begin to bring yourself back to the earth space, bringing yourself back into the room that you're sitting in, lying in. Begin to blink your eyes, wiggle your fingers a little bit. And when you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes. Kuan Yin leaves us, once again becoming the moon. And then even the moon and the sky disappear. The ocean is still there. But soon, only space is left. And so in that lovely space, take this memory and this journey with Kuan Yin with you as you return to yourself, as you return back into this place and time. And you might just try to think of a few things that maybe floated through your mind as you were sitting with Kuan Yin. And take this journey with you. And of course, you can always go back to the recording and fast forward to this portion of it so that you can sit with Kuan Yin again if you don't have a clear image of her. But come back into the space. And if you have any comments or questions, post those in the chat, and we'll come back together here in just a moment. I just want to remind you that this is the introduction to the course Connecting with Your Soul's Memory that I'll start next Wednesday if you're interested. You can see the information on the website. And let me unpin myself here. Okay. And we'll go to gallery. And if you don't already have it, I'm posting in the chat right now the website. If you're interested in looking for more information about the course, you can go to my website. Just go to the main page, and that's what will pop up when you go there. So I'm looking at the chat now with all these wonderful people from Long Island, from Toronto, Florida, Manchester, UK, Manchester, Asheville, which is very near where I am, Colorado, Chicago, Luxembourg, more North Carolina folks, other places, and several other Canadians. There's a person from Pennsylvania. Yeah. So if you have any questions or comments, you can type them in the chat and I'll respond to them. Or you can just unmute yourself and speak up right now if you'd like to. Coming out of a meditation, always a little hard to bring yourself around to speaking, but but please feel free to if you want to share something of the journey, that's wonderful. Or if you just have a general comment not related to your specific journey, that's great. Or a question, if it brought up any questions.
Can I share what happened?
Yes, go right ahead.
Is it okay to do that? Or I'm a very like speaking person.
Yes, it's very much okay to do that. Just you share as much as you're comfortable with sharing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's funny because years ago I was at my friend went to a family constellation thingy healing thing, and so I went, and this guy said to me that Om Mani Padme Hum is, that's what he said, that would be the right thing for me to as my chant years ago. So it was really cool seeing that, and I've admired Kuan Yin's story as much as I know of it, and the pictures, the most beautiful. And so then just on that meditation, and I pictured her clearly, Kuan Yin, and it's like she came, and it was like she came towards and then behind, and then emerged in with me, you know, and then from within me, she was like, if you can imagine, so if you can imagine, she's in me, but not, but you know, sort of more than that. And she's kind of going like this from my heart core, sort of opening. She's
Yes.
going like that. So it's literally just opening there. Oh, so she was going like that. And then, and you know, and then mind was coming in. So then I didn't kind of, so I don't know then. And then I think a kind of ball of light, I don't know. And then I sort of did start asking a couple of questions. It's about something specific that's going on, but it was sort of like hearing the thoughts, but it was like as if they were sort of clear now, because they were going to be falling somewhere to be held, you know. And
Yes.
but there was part of my mind that was tensed, and it was only one section of my mind, and it was like I heard this I don't, the words weren't clearly clear, but I kind of got the, you know, let go of that, you know, just sort of open up, and my whole mind started opening up, and actually that worry or that particular train of thought just dissolved, disappeared. And then when we were coming back, I felt like pure water, like tears, to washing my face. So I literally did this because I felt like doing that, because I had my hands held up. When we come back, so like wash my face and then come down to my heart, put my hands on my heart, and then land on my belly, and then we came to, and that was it. That was what I experienced, and it was very lovely, and I'm very glad that I came here, and it's very gentle and lovely and gorgeous.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing with us. That's beautiful. Yeah. It's a lovely thing to sit with these beings, and you know, and you can sit face to face and have a conversation. I've done that sometimes, but that's a beautiful experience when you feel that being come and just either overlay you or sometimes even become you, or you become it, whatever the right wording of that is. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for sharing that with us. Yeah. Anyone else want to share anything? Well, I'm going to stop the